In the early 19th century, an English textile worker named Ned Ludd, whether man or myth, gave his name to a movement that would echo through centuries. The Luddites were not afraid of progress, they were afraid of irrelevance. As new machines crept into the factories of Nottingham and Yorkshire, many skilled craftsmen realized that they were no longer needed. Their work, once a source of pride and livelihood, was being devoured by spinning frames and automated looms, and so they revolted, not out of hatred for technology, but out of love for the dignity of work. And history did not stop for them. We often treat the Luddites as backward or foolish, but they weren't wrong to be afraid. They were early witnesses to a pattern now all too familiar. The tool that empowers some will displace others. It has happened before, and it is happening again today. The machines of our era do not whir or clank. They hum in server racks and respond in complete sentences. Artificial intelligence is not a distant speculation, it is a present reality. And like the looms of old, it is changing the nature of work before most people have had time to think. In today's video, we'll examine 10 jobs that AI is poised to replace within the next 5 years. This isn't guesswork, it is a forecast grounded in observable trends, corporate disclosures, and technological capabilities that already exist. You may not be a Luddite, but you might be next. Let's begin. Hello, I'm Gene Botkin, and if you find value in this report and want to stay ahead of changes that will reshape every industry, then go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you think. Now, two professions are already being hollowed out by AI, like old tree trunks that still look solid until the wind pushes them over. The first are low-tier content writers, once in demand for blog filler, SEO articles, and endless product descriptions. Many of these jobs have quietly vanished. Businesses aren't hiring people to rewrite Amazon's listings or crank out boilerplate real estate copy anymore. AI can do it faster, cheaper, and with passable grammar. The firms behind these decisions are not heartless. They're just efficient in the way gravity is. The market doesn't care who gets paid, it only cares that the content gets made. And the second would be junior coders at large technology firms and overseas outsourcing houses. For years, these roles functioned like digital apprenticeships, copying code, fixing bugs, and building widgets. Now, large language models like GitHub Copilot and Claude are generating entire functions from scratch. Now, that doesn't mean that every programmer is doomed, but it does mean that the ladder has fewer rungs at the bottom. AI will not replace the best developers, but it will replace the worst, and the mediocre ones who never quite improved. Both of these roles thrived on volume and not artistry. They rewarded speed over skill, and now the machines are winning that race. Of course, some jobs do not vanish with a bang. They erode. One day, the tasks feel routine, and the next, they're automated, and nobody sends a farewell card. Take paralegals. For years, they've been the silent machinery behind law firms, organizing discovery documents, researching precedent, proofreading contracts. But legal AI tools are now parsing contracts in seconds, flagging inconsistencies, and even drafting clauses. And what once took a paralegal a day now takes a machine a blink. The software doesn't get tired, and it doesn't need health insurance, and it never spills coffee on deposition files. It's not that paralegals aren't valuable, it's that their value has been packaged into a subscription model. And then there's the issue of customer service. For decades, it was the great catch-all job, low barrier to entry, always hiring, and always thankless. But now, AI voice assistants can handle refunds, reschedules, and complaints without breaking a sweat. The rise of conversational agents is not science fiction. It is in your bank, your airline, and your online store. These systems do not crack under pressure, they don't escalate when yelled at, and they don't need to be trained, merely updated. Of course, some clients still demand a human ear, but the companies that serve them are doing the math, and the math says, let the bots take the night shift. Now, we don't notice the disappearance of these jobs because they fade in the background, but that's how erosion works, one layer at a time until the structure is gone and no one remembers what stood there. And then there are the professions that once felt untouchable, until quite recently, they weren't. I speak, of course, about the arts. For a long time, there was a quiet arrogance in the arts, a belief that creativity could not be imitated or much less replaced. Machines might calculate, but they could never dream. And yet, here we are. Voice actors are being cloned, sometimes without their consent. AI-generated characters are being pitched for commercials, and video games, complete with synthetic dialogue and emotional nuance, are as well. Visual artists now compete with diffusion models that can replicate their style in under a minute, and a digital brush doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't hesitate, and it never needs inspiration. It simply performs. And what's most unsettling isn't that these tools exist, it's that they're good. They're really good. Not transcendent, not yet, but good enough to fool the average consumer and to please the average client. For corporate budgets, good enough is the finish line. Now that doesn't mean that all artists will vanish, but it does mean that artistry is no longer the price of admission. You can still be a genius, but you'll be competing with a machine that never misses a deadline and never asks for royalties. In film, voice, illustration, and even music, the groundwork is already laid. Agencies and studios are quietly reducing their rosters. Executives are learning that software doesn't argue over credit. We used to believe that the soul of the artist set us apart, but now some wonder if the soul was ever required. And in our next section, we'll look at the unexpected casualties of automation, professions built on trust, presence, and human nuance. Some jobs were never about information, they were about presence. A good teacher does not just recite facts, and a good therapist doesn't just interpret patterns. These roles are built on trust, timing, and the ability to respond, genuinely, to the messiness of another person. But artificial intelligence has begun to respond, too. In education, adaptive learning platforms are tailoring lessons to students in real time. These aren't clunky quiz sites from the early internet. They're responsive systems that adjust difficulty, clarify misunderstandings, and simulate Socratic dialogue. For overworked teachers and overcrowded classrooms, the temptation is clear. Let the machine manage the baseline and focus on the outliers. But the result is obvious. The machine becomes the teacher, and the teacher becomes tech support. In mental health, AI-driven therapy apps have also taken off. They mimic CBT protocols, track mood swings, offer affirmations, and for many users, they work well enough. They're discreet, they're always available, and unlike a human therapist, they never seem distracted. In some ways, they listen better than people do. Now, are these apps truly therapeutic? That's up for debate. But large insurers and clinics aren't waiting for the debate to finish. They're cutting costs where they can. And when the choice is between a trained counselor and a 24/7 chatbot that gets decent reviews, the budget wins. The machines are not human, but they are learning to perform humanity with a precision that can feel unsettling, especially when they outperform those who once did the job, ostensibly, with heart. Which brings us to our final reflections. In the 1960s, as NASA prepared to send men to the moon, there were concerns, not about the rockets, but the people. Would astronauts be replaced by machines? And would AI someday make human exploration obsolete? The answer came not in code, but in character. Armstrong's boot print mattered because a person left it. And that same question echoes today. Will AI replace us, or will we choose to matter? The truth is, some jobs will go, others will be reshaped, but meaning is not found in a paycheck. It is found in doing something that machines cannot: loving, deciding, imagining, and sacrificing. Those things cannot be programmed. And if this video gave you something to think about, if you'd like to follow the path of what AI reshapes next, then like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes that their work matters. And until next time, keep your feet on the ground and your hands at the helm. With Elenarda, I'm Gene Botkin. End transmission.